Welcome to another episode of the Soothing Semantics podcast. I am your host, Rafi Pinsky. Make sure to subscribe, smash the like button, leave your comments. And today we have a very, very intelligent guest, someone who I found through Harris Sultan. If you haven't seen my episodes with Harris Sultan, make sure to go to some of the recent episodes of mine. And I was also a guest on Harris's channel, really a brilliant human being, creating amazing content. And Younes, who is on my show today, was on his show recently, and I found the conversation to be very interesting. Knowing that Younes has an Iranian background, he's also part Turkish and Pakistani, and understands Israel's point of view. Grew up Muslim, and now, quite frankly, doesn't have so much of a love for it. And I'm not specifically here to bash it, but we're going to get very raw and real here. We're just going to tell things like they are. So Younes Sadaghiani, right? How do I pronounce it?
Sadaghiani.
Sadaghiani. Okay.
Yeah.
So are you going to ship any gourmet sabzi to me after the episode? That's what I want to know.
Yes, 100%. I'll send it through the mail.
All right, my guy. might be just a little bit cold by the time it gets here, but okay, we'll manage. So Younes has his own channel. First off, make sure to follow him at Younes Rocks. That's Younes Rocks on Instagram. YouTube channel. Hold on, I know I'm subscribed to you.
It's the same. It's the same Younes Rocks, but for Instagram, there's two S's for the Younes, Younes. But if they just put my name, Younes Sadaghiani, you're gonna have the links under the video anyway. So
the last name is tough. What I do is I dissect. If I have a long last name, I split it in half, and then it's easier for me to remember it. Or I split it.
Sadaghiani.
Exactly. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Okay. So Younes again has some really raw takes. Now that we see what's going on in Israel, first of all, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So many things to cover. Now, with what happened on October 7th, we have all this instability in the Middle East. You initially grew up in Iran. You were originally, I imagine, a practicing Muslim for part of your life.
What happened? You could say.
Yeah, so maybe even go into a little bit of your childhood growing up in Iran. We don't have to spend too much time on it, and then give us.
So I grew up in Iran, Tehran, and my dad used to work for the British Embassy, and I grew up in a relatively moderate liberal family. Whereas my granddad was very devout, and when I was 5 years old or 3 years old, he used to take me to Friday prayer. So I actually don't have anything against Muslims, because I understand there's a lot of good Muslims. My granddad was one of them. My problem is with the Islamic ideology and just in general religious extremism. I think people that are extremely religious or extremely atheist, or they hold on to an ideology too hard, that's a problem. But Islam, the problem with Islam is that it's a very militant ideology. So apart from that, I grew up in Iran. I went to school there. I was there till I was 13 years old. And the reason why I came to the UK is because my dad was actually arrested from the Islamic Republic of Iran, and he was accused of being a spy, and he was thrown in jail. And he had to give all his assets to the Islamic Republic for him to come out on bail. And when he came out on bail, he escaped the country.
Wow. So then he pretty much had nothing at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did your family end up in London?
So we had connections to London. As I said, my dad used to work for the British Embassy. I have all my mom's side of the family living in London. So that's why.
I wanted to kind of ask you about London in general, where all of this is changing, meaning you started to get into Sharia law becoming more of an issue. You made that hilarious video walking outside. I don't know if that was your house or you're just walking out of a building.
Yeah.
I laughed so hard when I first saw that, dude.
Yeah.
You walk outside and you see fanatic Muslims in the UK just screaming for Sharia law.
Shia, innit? They're all kuffar. They're all kuffar. What? Who could do anything about it? What? What? Shia kuffar. What? Do something.
Every weekend, Mohammed tries to get his children together for a day out. But as Mohammed and his wives are unemployed and dependent on benefits, days like these are rare.
I think there is two problems that's threatening the Western world. One is wokeism, the rise of woke ideology, which is whether it is LGBTQ, toxic feminism, critical race theory, all these different nonsense that we have, where we call woke ideology. And that combined with the rise in Islamism. And it's happening more so in Europe than it is happening in America, but it will soon happen in America as well. I mean, you have a lot of problem with wokeism. Just wait till you import a lot of Islamists into your country. And I think that's what's dragging down Europe. And the problem is that because of cancel culture and because of Islam in general, the type of religion it is, no one is allowed to criticize it. And I find that absolutely ridiculous. I don't think any idea is beyond criticism. I'm not having a go at all Muslims. Am I saying all Muslims are bad? Of course, I'm not saying that. I know that 95% of Muslims are probably good people and they're peace-loving and have family members that are Muslim. However, Islam as an ideology is extremely dangerous. And you can see that if you just read the Quran, read the Hadiths, and look at the life of Muhammad. The problem with Islam is that no one can criticize it. And throughout history, they basically killed people, beheaded people for questioning Islam or the Quran. They do it to this day in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. And that's what makes Islam more special than the other religions. I'm not saying there isn't things to criticize in Christianity or Judaism or any idea for that matter. I don't think any idea is beyond criticism. I'm a free speech advocate. I believe in freedom of speech and I believe in open dialogue. Okay, I don't believe in cancel culture. So I just made my page to be able to speak about these problems that we have in society, whether it's the rise of wokeism or whether it is the rise of Islamism. The problem is that many people actually criticize the woke and they make fun of the woke and they make fun of LGBTQ and they make fun of these crazy feminists and they make fun of critical race theory, but no one has the balls to criticize the Islamists and Islam. And that's because they think, well, the Islamists and Islam might come for you. They might come and kill you. At the end of the day, you're not going to really have anyone from LGBTQ community coming for you, right? They might try to cancel you, but your life is not a threat. But if you criticize Islam, your life is a threat. Personally, I'm not a scared person. I'm not fearful. I'm very brave, and I don't even think about it. Like, I don't even think about it when I go out that, oh my God, like someone's going to come after me, because I just don't have that mentality. But a lot of people around me were worried on my behalf initially.
Yeah.
So here we are now.
It takes a lot of balls to say it, because in the Jewish world, we can criticize. You know, we have the freedom for the most part. People might not like us for it, but we can.
Yeah.
In Israel, you have freedom of speech. You know, within reason, right? If you're
no, you have freedom of speech, but then there's a difference between freedom of speech and getting cancelled or having your life in danger because of what you said.
Absolutely. So what do you think is happening in the UK? Do you think it's as big of a deal as people are making it in terms of the country eventually becoming Islamic, or having Sharia implemented. Do you think that'll actually ever happen, or do you think it's just
I
a
don't look, the thing is, I don't think it will happen because of individuals like me and people that speak up about it, you know. However, if it's unchecked and if we have unlimited immigration over time, of course it will, because they have a much higher birth rate. And if we have all these immigrants imported to our country, people don't want to adapt and assimilate. Of course, over time, I don't know when it will be, 2040, 2050, 2060, but it will ultimately happen unless we manage to have open dialogue about it. And I know for a fact there are many Muslims in Islamic households. I have a few friends that are like this actually, that don't believe in Islam, but they're just scared to come out and say it because they don't want to be disowned by their family, or they don't want to, put themselves in harm's way. So I feel like the more we
Why do you think this is such a funny thing? And I think you mentioned this on Harris's episode. Why do the Muslims that leave their countries because of Sharia then
Mhm.
come to the West and then want Sharia? Why do you think they have such a crazy mentality? Like, how does that happen?
Because two reasons. First reason is they're brainwashed by their own religion. They're brainwashed and they think they have a responsibility to Islamize the whole world, as it says in the Quran. So they see it as a duty to Islamize the whole world. But then also,
Dawah jihad,
yeah, like
whichever.
Dawa and Muhammad Hijab and all these idiots.
Well,
Because first of all,
I meant dawah in the sense of dawah as actual dawah, not just.
oh, okay. Yeah, exactly. Dawa, jihad. So they think they have a responsibility to Islamize the whole world. But then the second reason, and the more important reason, in my opinion, is that these guys that ask for Sharia law is actually the younger generation and the generation that was born in this country. And there was a study done recently that actually Muslims that are born in the West are actually tend to be more extreme than their fathers and their grandfathers. And the reason for that is that they probably grew up in the West. They haven't been to Pakistan or Afghanistan or Iran. They haven't lived there, and they haven't experienced firsthand what Islam can do to a society. So maybe that's why they're a little bit more extreme.
I remember you also said this on Harris's channel. I found it very interesting, but it makes sense.
Yeah,
It makes sense because just to kind of expound on your point,
yeah,
they're not experiencing these negative life experiences. They're not being
yeah,
arrested for not wearing a hijab. They get to
yeah,
criticize what they don't like in the Western countries they live in. And so they want to feel this attachment to their motherland, especially when you
yeah,
have Arab, let's say you have Arab Muslims in New York. New York is
mhm,
a liberal state,
yeah,
and they see what's happening to Gaza, and they want to put on their kafiyas and run around, and they want to be the Hamas of New York or
yeah,
the Hezbollah of New York. I'm going to take it into the streets and look for Jews and make them feel unsafe because they're losing the war. They're losing the war in Gaza. So
yeah,
let's defend their honor in the streets of New York. Let's wave the flags. Let's be out there, yada yada.
yeah.
So this way, I think they have some feeling of being a warrior in some
Hmm.
form or fashion.
Yeah, exactly. They have nothing better to do. And also they're brainwashed.
Right. So I understand your criticism of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you stand on Israel? Like, what's your take on it? Do you feel that Israel has the right to defend itself? Do you feel that Jews have a right to be in the country, to have their own state? Where do you stand on these topics, on these discussions?
Yeah, I do believe that Israel has a right to exist. However, that doesn't mean I condone everything that Israel does. I think they've made a lot of mistakes, especially in the last 70 years. And I also think they have a lot of right-wing people in their government that are warmongers. However, that being said, Israel is the front line of democracy. Usually, more times than not, what they do is defensive. They've been on many battles since 1948 that actually it wasn't started by them. It was either started by Jordan, or it was started by Lebanon, or it was started by Egypt. And they actually ended up winning all those wars and taking land from these countries such as Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon, and end up giving the land back after the war. So by that evidence, I don't really see Israel as this Zionist movement that tries to conquer and cause genocide and kill. Because if you look
Ultimately, you feel that most of Israel's wars were defensive. I totally understand your criticism of Israel. It's a country like any other country. There's no country on the
yeah,
planet that can't be criticized in terms of killing civilians, war. You look at any country in the world, it was initially part of some empire.
yeah,
And I mean, we're intelligent animals. People seem to forget that. People want money, they want power. Men do a lot of dumb things for sex. I mean, this is just what you know what I'm saying. Having access to women, you have Genghis Khan and all these emperors and gladiators. They conquered cities just to have, you know, this is fortunately or unfortunately what the world we live in.
yeah.
So, in terms of Israel, what do you think? Do you understand the response of Israel on October 7th, or do you feel that maybe they should have responded differently?
I think like the proper response to Hamas on 7th of October would have been to attack Iran's nuclear facilities, because Iran is the country that's behind Hamas, and Iran is the one that caused this. So Iran doesn't want the Abraham Accords to be signed, and that's why they funded Hamas to carry out these attacks. And they basically sacrificed Gaza. Like you have a card in your hand. What do you want to sacrifice? Gaza, Hezbollah, Houthis. Which one do you want to sacrifice? They decided they're going to sacrifice Gaza. And they knew this was going to happen. They knew that Israel will retaliate, and they knew a lot of innocent civilians will die, and they knew there's going to be this massive uproar all over the world. And it was actually a very calculated move by Iran. And as I said, the proper response, in my opinion, was to strike the nuclear facilities in Iran and go after the Hamas leaders, especially the ones that live in Qatar in a five-star hotel.
Yeah.
Because if you get those guys, then it would have been a much cleaner war, in my opinion.
I understand that, but they
Yeah.
still they still have hostages. So as much as you're
Yeah.
saying to cut that, you're saying instead of shooting some rounds into center mass, let's give an analogy, you're saying to put the bullet right in the head, to kind of find the people at the top, the leadership, and pick them out.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that, but at the same time, when you have over 200 hostages, you can't just say, okay, let's attack Iran. Meaning that's something we should do anyway. But what do we do about the hostages? We got to get them out. So do we make a trade of 200 something hostages for say about 10,000 prisoners? There might be some Arab Palestinian prisoners that maybe don't have fair trial. I can't say, I don't know, but I know that a large percentage of them probably did something wrong. So we're
Mhm.
exchanging civilians. For the most part, there were some soldiers that were taken hostage, but we're taking primarily Israeli civilians and exchanging them for a much, 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 much larger number of Palestinians, which is also funny. It seems to me that Palestinians themselves don't see their people as valuable if they're willing. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah,
Israelis are
yeah,
willing to trade one. We traded Gilad Shalit, if you recall, one soldier for over 1,000 Palestinians.
yeah. I heard that. What can I say? I feel like if you really want to look into it, the issue is very multifaceted. I truly also believe there is a problem with the Islamic ideology, but I also think a lot of the people that fight for Hamas, these are orphaned kids. These are people that have nothing better to do with their life, and they are filled with hate and anger, and they want to take out their anger on Israel because they see Israel as the enemy.
Right.
And they see Israel as the oppressor, and they see Israel as the occupier, and they think the reason why their life sucks so much, and they have their parents dead, their brothers dead, their wife dead, their kids dead, is because of Israel.
Right.
However, they're misled. It's not because of Israel, it's because of their own leadership, it's because of their own forefathers that keep trying to attack. Israel has offered you a state 4 different occasions. You didn't take it. Israel took out every single Jew from Gaza for you to give you your piece of land. You didn't sign the contract. Arafat said no, even with the West Bank. So in that situation, you just have to ask yourself and think, who is the real enemy? That being said, also, I think like Israelis have made a lot of mistakes. The fact that they can control the water into Gaza, they can control Wi-Fi, they can control electricity. So you have one country basically having the sovereignty over another country. Is that Israel's fault 100%? No, it's not. But at the same time, it's a bit, you know. And look, another thing I was thinking about
I
is
have to
that,
look into that, by the way, in terms of controlling electricity. There's something that I don't know if, and maybe Israel does want to have that control over it. I'm not going to sit here and defend Israel till I'm blue in the face. I like to for the as much as I can discuss facts, but I do want to kind of get back to you even after the podcast in terms of electricity, and water and resources.
okay, no, but I'm pretty sure they do. They don't have clean water in Gaza.
Yeah, no, I know they're
And
providing, but I wonder if they can provide it on their
yeah,
own. If Egypt, if
look,
Egypt,
but this is what I was going to say anyway. I don't believe in a two-state solution anymore. I really don't. I really don't. Because I feel like after the destruction that's happened, there's no way they're going to have a proper government coming and taking over Gaza. You're going to have another extremist group.
yeah,
If it's not Hamas, it will be the orphaned kids. It will be whatever.
Islamic
Yeah.
Jihad.
Yeah, Islamic Jihad, whatever you want to call it. I don't believe in a two-state solution anymore, especially after all the destruction that's happened. And I think for the next 20 or 30 years, Israel has to take over Gaza. Yes, they have to naturalize Palestinian people as Israelis, give them passports, and basically take over the place, de-radicalize, uh, and hopefully with time, wounds will heal. I'm not sure about the West Bank personally, but I just don't think a two-state solution is possible anymore because there's nothing left of Gaza anyway.
I
Like, what are
agree
you
with you.
going to do? There's nothing left of it. Even if you have a government in Gaza, what are you going to govern? But empty buildings,
Mhm.
So it doesn't make sense to me.
Right. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you got a chance to listen to my episode with Harris,
Mm.
but if you,
I saw some parts of it, but you can tell me.
I would really love for you to watch the rest of it when you have a chance. Even if you
Yeah,
watch
yeah.
it in increments, 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, would love for you to listen to it because I cover a lot of this.
Hmm.
Ultimately, I don't believe in a one state and I don't believe in a two state. And it's not because in theory I wouldn't want them to work. In a utopian world, I would love to have peace with the Palestinians. And
Yeah.
I even go more so to say that I call them Palestinians out of respect for them, but I don't consider Palestinian to be an actual ethnic group.
No, it's not.
Okay. So they want, once Israel became a nationality, the Palestinians said, well,
Mhm.
if they can have it, we want one too. You are
Yeah.
Arab Muslims living in the British Mandated Palestine. You have
Yeah.
black Palestinians and you have Palestinians that are a lot whiter than I am. So if you're going to tell me that the Afro-Palestinians and blonde white Palestinians are from the exact same place and their bloodline is exactly the same, you're either a moron or you're lying to me. So if you can have Jews that look like me and you can have Ethiopian Jews and we're living in the same country as Israelis,
Yeah.
I'm okay with you having that as well with the Arabs who call themselves Palestinians. But you don't try to make yourselves more legitimate. It doesn't work that way. If you want to come from a religious point of view, the Jews have much more of a claim to this land than they do. If you want to come from it, don't want to come from it from a religious perspective, just like anywhere else in the world throughout history, you didn't accept the terms you had on the table. You wanted to fight for the entire thing. You lost. And you didn't just lose once, you lost over and over and over again. At some point, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to say, this isn't ideal. We don't really like that the Jews are here, but they're not going anywhere. They're a lot stronger than we are. Do we want to keep fighting them for eternity? Because the likelihood is we will continue to be here. Will the Jewish state be here forever? Only God knows. Many empires have fallen. Who knows? But because we have such a strong military, we're a nuclear power, we're probably going to be around for the next few hundred years, I would say. Okay? Who knows? So are the Palestinians going to keep fighting us and losing? Or are they going to eventually say, you know what? It's not ideal, but let's take Gaza, make it our state. Maybe Egypt can give us some of the Sinai. That's the best we've got. What are your other options? What are your other options? Your other options are you're going to keep waging war and you're going to keep getting your ass kicked. That's what it comes down to. Because if you think that Israel is this white colonialist entity, the Jews would not be fighting with this amount of tenacity if they believed they were on some random land. The Jews are firmly planted in the land. They have every motivation to fight for it.
Yeah.
So because we only have one. We don't have 22 other countries. We have one. So if we're kicked out of this, we're back into the diaspora again. We got no military. We're petrified. We're scared to death of that happening again.
Yeah, and also with the Jews, because history treated them so badly, I think the Zionist movement was just a movement to say enough is enough, and we're not going to be the one that is always bullied. We're going to be, the word is, what's the word? I forgot the word. No, not sovereign. It's like when someone is strong and tough, like what do you call that?
Brave?
No. It's going to come back to me, but it's not indestructible, but something like along those lines. Like, huh?
Not invincible?
Formidable. We're going to be formidable.
Formidable. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to be formidable, and we're going to defend ourselves because, the Jews were just getting bullied all throughout history from different nations, from the Romans to Alexander the Great. Persians treated them a little bit better, but then the Arab conquest just basically genocided them all. Muhammad and his fellow Arabs genocided the Jews, and they literally had to escape after the Arab conquest. And for 1,400 years, they were pushed into Europe, and they were just getting kicked out of different countries. And then the last time it was Germany and Hitler. And that basically pushed the Jews to a sovereign state so they don't get, kicked out of every country they go to. And they were like, we're going to be formidable now. We're going to have our own land. And also we shouldn't forget that Israel was a barren land when there was a reason why the United Nations decided to give Israel back to Israel, because no one was living there anyway. Tel Aviv was a malaria swamp full of malaria mosquitoes. And majority of Jordanians were actually in Jordan and Egyptians. So there's no such thing as Palestine. Palestine was literally a village in southern Israel called Palestine. There was no national identity. These people were like fundamentally Egyptians that lived in a village called Palestine. So they were like, there's this barren land for the Jews. They don't really have a homeland. Let's give that back their home to themselves. And they do. And then the Jews come and they basically bring economic prosperity. They build new buildings. They get rid of the malaria. They have a lot of scientists, so they make a lot of advancements, and they create an economic boom in the area. And then all these Arabs were like, okay, maybe we should go back to Israel. There's like a lot of new things going on. And, you know, there's like some jobs going on. And then they just go back and they infiltrate and then they try to claim the land back. But it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, a lot of them came after Israel was already like the Jews
Yeah.
were already trying to settle it and build things. They're like, wait a minute. And I what's so interesting, there's so many points I can make here, right? Because you have a lot of anti-Israelis, right? Staunch pro-Palestinians who hate Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And hold on, I lost my train of thought for a quick moment, but it's gonna come back to me. Oh, damn it. I totally just
Blacked out.
oh, okay, hold on. Because it was a good point. Here, I think this was the point. Why do you think this is a question? Answer it obviously as honestly as you can. In terms of why the Jews were kicked out,
Mm-hmm.
why do you feel that Jews throughout history were always kicked and beaten around? Like, because people, this was my point, because people who are anti-Zionist or anti-Israel, which is the same, or anti-Jewish, which is the same, essentially all the same. They like to say,
Yeah.
"Oh, no one wanted you. You were always kicked. You were kicked out of 106 countries or 109 countries."
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I can't really comment on that, to be honest. I don't know. Well, I can give you two reasons why I think you could be. And one could be like quite anti-Semitic. So buckle up. First
Okay.
reason is that they were just cowards. Like if you keep getting bullied, then you're a coward. Okay? And maybe that's what the Zionist movement is trying to do, is to stop the Jews from being cowards and be formidable. Okay? Or another reason is that they went to different countries and they were quite good in sciences, they were quite good at maths, they were quite good at banking. So they ended up dominating different industries within those countries. And because they were the outsiders and they were quite rich, the host countries didn't like that. And I think that was one of the reasons for the Holocaust and Hitler, because the Jews, they controlled the banking and they controlled a lot of gold. So when the German economy collapsed after World War One, majority of the Germans were extremely poor. Even people that had cash saved, the cash didn't mean anything because that currency had collapsed and they might as well use it as toilet paper. But because the Jews were smart and they had a lot of gold, they managed to stay rich. And Hitler came along and said, you know what? It's all the fault of the Jews. They stole all your money. It's all their fault. Let's kick them out. So, and I think maybe that might have happened throughout history in different countries.
I think you are spot on, dude. I honestly think you're
Yes.
spot on. What I
Yeah.
will say though about cowardice,
Yeah.
and I respect so much what you're saying, because I even
Yeah.
say that Western Jews, say in the US, they need to grow a pair. What I'm so tired of, and I see that's changing. I see now in the streets a lot of Jews in New York are coming out, and they're even willing to get into physical altercations. You have to be very proud of who you are. If you are constantly apologizing for your identity and apologizing for having a land, people are going to see the apology as you being wrong. But if you stand on business and you say, this is what I believe, I don't care if you like it or not, people are more likely to eventually see your side. Right?
Yeah.
You're standing on business and you're not afraid to have your opinion and very much put it in someone else's face. And that's actually a reason why people respect Islam, even if they don't agree with it, because there is an element to they believe what they believe.
Exactly. They're very unapologetic, unfortunately.
That's something.
Yeah.
It has its negatives, but it also is something to be admired in a way, because they don't.
Yeah.
They believe what they believe regardless. And with Israel, that's changed a lot. So what I definitely think, the thing is Jews have been a major minority in the countries they've been in. So
yeah,
as much as you can say maybe there was a level of cowardice to some extent, I think that it's also very hard to go up against the majority of the country if they're all against you, or if a large percentage of them are against you. They have a police force, they have a military, they have people that can come out in thousands with sticks and stones and bats and who knows what. You're severely outnumbered. You're not really in a position, you could do it in small numbers. You've had different groups throughout history who were very tough. You even had very interesting. There was a group of Jews in Yemen called the Habanis, the Habanim. I can send you an article about it. And I think it was the king of, who was it, Jordanian king maybe? I forget which king, who used them as his bodyguards. There's a picture of three brothers who protected this king, because these Yemenite Jews were known as being very strong fighters. They were warriors, and so he wanted them as protection. So you have that throughout history, but Jews were not known for being this tough group of people.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, I support Israel. I think they are, even though they're not perfect, I feel like they are the front line of democracy. And people in Europe don't understand that, because if Israel doesn't win that war, Islamism is going to get spread even in Europe. It's already spreading. It's going to spread even more. So I feel like if there's different barriers to freedom and the free world, Israel is the first barrier. The second barrier is Europe. And then the third and last barrier is America.
I think that's totally true. That's what people don't realize, and I think there's nothing funnier than this queers for Palestine thing. It is the most hilarious.
Exactly.
It's the most hilarious movement on the planet. But it's a horseshoe theory kind of thing.
Yeah.
I spoke about this on my episode with Harris. They're attracted to them. They're so fundamentally different from them, and I think even women who are extremely feminist, deep down in their hearts, their guts, there's always going to be an attraction for masculinity. Even if they have resentment for it, even if they claim they hate it outwardly, inwardly they crave it. And I think they even want it more so than a more traditional woman. They're fighting it so hard because they need it so badly, and they haven't gotten it. And you see an Islamic man with a long beard and a gun, and he has a kafia or a turban or whatever he's wearing, and he's going out there and he's fighting for his land, and he's steadfast, and he's giving up his life for God. And she sees that, or he hit they them Zer Zed sees this, and they go, there's something so attractive about it. What is this? How can I was telling Harris about this. How can I tame this man? There must be a soft side to him. I want to find it. Yeah, there's a soft side at the end of his gun. That's the only, it's not soft, but.
Yeah, that's true. The masculine men and alpha men are very attractive, and there's a need for aggression and there's a need for masculinity. But you need to be a dangerous person, but you need to have that danger under control. The problem is these people don't have it under control. So they're actually weak men, in my opinion. A man that can't control his temper or his anger, no matter how powerful he is, that's a weak man. And these Islamists, these jihadis, these are weak men. People that shout the loudest are usually the weakest. It's actually the most quiet person in the room that's the most powerful.
I agree. I 100% agree. I could not agree more. Whenever you see two guys getting into a fight and one guy is yelling and trying to put his head into the other guy, and the other guy is just super calm, you know who's who's going to win that fight. Exactly. 9 out of 10 times. 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you think would be the solution to this whole thing? Now, I have my thoughts, and I'd love to share them with you, but obviously you're the guest. I'd love to hear what you think. What do you think should be the solution? Because you mentioned that we should make the Gazans Israeli citizens.
Yeah, I don't think there can be a two-state solution now. I would like for it to happen, but since Gaza is pretty much in rubbles now, and you don't really know what kind of a government is going to rise up again in Gaza. It can be Hamas 2.0 or even worse. You don't really know. So I feel like Israel has to take military control over the region, try to go through a de-radicalization program for the youth and teach them Western values and just values of humanity and not extremism and stuff like that. And maybe in 20 or 30 years' time, they can have their own state. But at this moment in time, I think Israel should take over Gaza and naturalize Palestinians. But also the bigger problem here is Iran and just Islamic extremism in the region. So you have Hezbollah, you have Houthis, you have all these Muslim Brotherhood And Iran needs to collapse. I feel like the Islamic Republic of Iran, as long as there is Islamic Republic of Iran, there will be problems for Israel. So
Yeah,
the head of the snake, the head of the snake is Islamic Republic of Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran needs to go. And I really hope that happens because I'm Iranian. And I think Iran would be a gold mine. And the Middle East fell when Iran fell in 1979, when there was a revolution. And that's when you see the rise of Islamism in the whole region after 1979. So if Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, collapses, then we will have an economic boom in the region. We will have peace. We will have security. And all these different groups, they will go down. Like the main virus is the Islamic Republic. Let's just put it that way. Once you kill that tumor, all the different nerves in different states will, over time, will disappear because they don't have their heart pump that basically feeds them.
Why is the Islamic Republic of Iran so against Israel? Is it a deep Shia fundamentalist belief that the Jews cannot live there? That it's their duty, it's their it's the Ayatollah's duty to remove the Jews, or just to not allow them to have a state? What is it?
Well, there's few folds. So first of all, is the hatred between Islam and Jews. Muhammad himself didn't like Jews himself. He committed genocide against the Khyber community.
Yeah.
And he killed Kenana, the husband of Sophia. Kenana was the leader of the Khyber community. He killed Kenana and he slept with his wife, Sophia, the same night he killed her husband. And that was actually the Arab conquest into Israel. So Muhammad himself didn't like the Jews at all. He actually has surahs in the Quran that says, kill Jews and Christians when you find them. And if you can't kill them, charge them more tax, which is the jizya. So Muhammad himself didn't. So Muhammad didn't set a great example in terms of that. However, let's just assume it's not just about religion. I think it's more about this whole, they do not want America and they do not want Western values in the Middle East. And the whole thing is more geopolitical. So basically, Israel and Palestine has become a battleground for America, Europe, and Israel against Iran or Islamic extremism. So that's when it's happening. And one side can only win. They call it the resistance. They don't want the Jews living there and they don't want Western interference in the region. To some extent, they are right. Let's keep it real, because Western interference in the region is the one that actually collapsed the region. We had all these democratically elected governments, such as the Shah, which was overthrown by America and by Britain in 1979 because he raised the price of oil and he nationalized Iranian oil. And Iran was becoming very rich very rapidly, and they didn't like that, so they overthrew him. And the result is that we get the Ayatollahs in Iran now. Same thing with Saddam Hussein. You can say he was a dictator, but he was 100 times better than ISIS. We had Gaddafi. That's, again, same thing. He wanted to trade oil in his own currency instead of trading it in dollars. They overthrew him. And I can go on. All these different governments in the Middle East that were overthrown, that were democratically elected governments, and that basically destabilized the whole region, and now we're in a mess. So unfortunately, America and Britain and Europe and the Jews, to some extent, they bear some responsibility to the unstableness of the region. Doesn't mean they're the bad guys, but they have some responsibility. And that's why they made a lot of mistakes. They shouldn't have overthrown all these democratically. And it was all to do with power and money anyway. Oil, power, and money.
Of course, yeah. No, I can't. You're right. You're right. No, there's definitely a power play. There's no question. People at the top want money, and they're willing to use all the people as pawns to get what they want, so they can sit in a golden chair and drop a deuce on their golden toilet. This is just very true, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think regardless of the geopolitics, there's no question that Israel isn't perfect. They still need an army. You can talk about the American military going to wars they shouldn't be going to. Israel can't afford to lose a war. The only war that they maybe didn't win, arguably, was the 2006 Second Lebanon War, but they didn't lose because if they would have lost, if Hezbollah actually took over Israel, then it would have been over. So, So yeah, it's complicated. Honestly, how do you think if you're suggesting that we take over Gaza and we give Palestinians citizenship, a right of return for them wouldn't work? And also, we're now trying to accept over 2 million people who just supported a terrorist group, which could also undermine the Jewish majority. Meaning, most of these Muslim countries, they're not going to be willing to take another community in to threaten their Muslim majority. They're not. They would never do that. Iran is not going to take in how. Let's say for argument's sake, Iran has 50 million people. I don't know. Maybe it has more. Maybe it has less. I don't know how many people live in Iran. But the
Mhm.
point is if Iran had 50 million people and we brought in 100 million Americans into Iran,
Mhm.
Iran would never accept that. No Muslim country would allow them to become the minority in their own country. So for Israel now to bring in Palestinians, they would at the very
I didn't say the West Bank. I just said Gaza. I don't know how many people live in Gaza, but I'm sure you have 9 million people in Israel. Even if there's 2 million Palestinians join your country, you'll still be the majority.
not by that much. We have about 7 million Jews. We have 2 million Arabs. That would make it close to 5 million. If you have 5 million
Mhm.
Arabs and you have 7 million Jews, it's only a matter of time until there's more of them.
Yeah, well, first few things. You're right. There's a hypocrisy in terms of the Arab countries. I mean, Egypt could have ended this war the first day by opening their borders and taking all the Gazans in. They didn't do that. It's funny that all these Arab countries, they virtue signal, such as Jordan, but they would never take the Palestinians from West Bank. Iran wouldn't take them. And it's funny to me that they might talk the talk, but in reality, like these countries, Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, they're actually helping Israel
Right.
in their war against Hamas in Gaza behind the scenes. And you know, when the rockets were launched by Iran, half the rockets were hit by Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is clearly helping Israel
They
and
don't. Well,
Jordan.
they don't want to help Iran. Yeah, they don't. They don't
Yeah,
share.
exactly. So I understand the hypocrisy because they come and protest, and also same thing happened during ISIS war, where Saudi Arabia didn't take a single Iraq or Syrian refugee, and they all end up coming to Europe. Same thing is happening now in Afghanistan and Pakistan,
Israel.
where a
Israel.
million Afghans fled Afghanistan and Pakistan deported every single one of them. So of course there is hypocrisy in terms of the Arab countries. If you care so much about your Arab brothers or Palestinian brothers, then why don't you give them shelter? So that's true. However, do you have a better solution? Do you really think that Gaza is going to be a governable city? And how do you ensure we're not going to have another extremist government rising?
I have three alternatives, and two of them are not good alternatives. When I say good, I
Okay.
mean they're not nice. But this is not that. It's not that I preface this by saying that these are two out of the three are not what I want. I think that they're inevitable, unfortunately. I
Hmm.
think the Palestinians have three choices to make,
Yeah.
and one of them is going to be their best choice. The other two are going to really suck for them. The
Hmm.
first choice is that they make Gaza their state, whether they want to call it Palestine, they can call it Gazastan, they can call it nothing, they can call it whatever they want. Maybe Egypt would give them part of the Sinai. I think the fact of the matter is they should just give them half the Sinai. Gaza should be Israel's land, and that's it. Israel
Hmm.
should just take Gaza, and that's the end of it. They go to the Sinai. There's huge land there that's not almost nothing's being done with it. The funniest part is if Israel still had ownership of the Sinai by now, the Sinai would have been blooming. There would have been resorts. There would have been so many things going on in the Sinai Peninsula. Israel would
Yeah.
have turned it into such an incredible place. They had so much land. It was so
Hmm.
much bigger than the actual state of Israel. I just know based on what they did with Israel, they would have done so much with that piece of land. Egypt has done practically nothing with it,
Hmm.
so which is hilarious. So they should do that, but knowing the Palestinians, they're probably not going to accept Gaza as their state. They're going to continue to try to fight us for the rest of it. And unfortunately, you
Yeah.
have countries like Iran that are going to motivate them to keep fighting that fight because they don't want Israel to normalize ties with the other countries, such as the Gulf states. And they also don't want Israel to exist in the first place. So they're being
Yeah.
used as ones to continue fighting this losing battle. And so making Gaza their state or making the Sinai part of their state would be their best option. The other two options are very unfortunate, but those are more likely the realities is that either we're going to eventually fight another war where most of them are going to be killed, or most of them eventually are going to have to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So they have to make those decisions, and people may hear this and say, that's horrible, you sound like a genocidal maniac. No one said that to me yet, but maybe people would think it. Maybe live in the world. If you have any understanding of history, you understand that throughout history, people have been kicked out of lands, people have been conquered, countries have been taken over. This is the unfortunate circle of life. This has happened throughout history. It's not what I want. I don't want land to be conquered anymore. If they want to make a state in Gaza, is it a large piece of land? No. Well, do they have what they ideally want, which is the whole country? No. I mean, I don't know what they would have done with it anyway. If the Palestinians took over Israel, they would probably turn the country into a shithole anyway. Let's be perfectly honest. But if they make Gaza their state and they stop trying to fire rockets, I'm fine with that. And to be honest, most Israelis wouldn't give a damn. They'd be like, go ahead. We pulled out in 2005. You want to make it your state? You can vote in a more liberal, a more less extreme government, and you're not trying to fight us anymore. No problem. You want to come work? You want to travel to Jerusalem, to Al-Aqsa Mosque? By all means. That's it. That's all we want. Just stop fighting us. You can have your little Gaza. That's all. That's fine. Our country's tiny too. Israel's a tiny country as well. It's not like we have this huge land.
Yeah. No, it's true that it's actually a very small piece of land. So I don't. The question is that whether Egypt is going to let Palestinians live.
Other countries can do it too. I'm sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
So the problem is the Egyptians are not going to let the Gazans live in their country, and they're not going to give them even 1 inch. So that is the problem.
Why?
That's what I mean.
Why are they not? Why are they not doing that?
I don't know, because they're hypocrites. They're hypocrites, and that's actually funny because Palestinians are actually genetically Egyptian. Like the Palestinians living in Gaza are genetically Egyptian, and the Palestinians living in West Bank are genetically Jordanian. So I just don't know why.
It's a mixture. I mean, I think they're all somewhat mixed. I think the Gazan Palestinians are much more Egyptian, and the West Bank Palestinians are more Jordanian. But they still intermarried. You have a mixture of. All of them are a mixture of Syrian, Lebanese, Jordan, Egypt.
They're Arabs. They're Arabs. They're all Arabs. Yeah, they're literally all Arabs. So there's no national identity of Palestine. It was actually something that was propagated by Arafat to be able to go against the Jews. As I said, it's a complicated situation. I really don't know. Personally, I would exactly do what you just said. I would say to the Palestinians in Gaza, go and live in Egypt. And I would say to the Palestinians in West Bank, go and live in Jordan. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. And also what they will say is that, oh, this is ethnic cleansing. You literally pushed out a whole race out of where they live. So it's a very complicated situation, but I just don't see a two-state solution, especially if the two states are split. Like Gaza is in the west and West Bank's in the east. So you have two different blocks of people, and in the middle there is Israel. Like, how is that going to work? You know, it doesn't work unless you get rid of Gaza. Unless you get rid of Gaza and you tell all the Gazans to go and live in the West Bank.
They're not going to do that either, though. I'm saying they're not going to willingly go. None of this is going to happen willingly. It's either going to happen if it's good. They're not going to go anywhere willingly. They might settle willingly. They might say, you know what, we're tired of fighting. Fine. You're not going to get them to go somewhere else willingly. Meaning, well, let me retract that. If Egypt opened their borders after October 7th, at least 50% of the Gazans probably would have gone into Egypt. If not 50%, at least a quarter of them would have gone. But to get all of them to leave, highly unlikely. They're only going to leave if the war is so bad they have no other choice. And this war was. I think they would have. Again, if the borders were open, they would have. Other countries should accept them. The fact of the matter is, how did Islam spread across the world? It didn't spread by them saying, oh, Islam's great. Would you like to join us? That happened to some degree. People convert to Islam willingly, for sure. But for the most part, Islam spread across the Middle East and Africa and parts of Europe because they conquered those lands. They didn't ask for their permission. And now they're like, it's not fair. You're kicking people out. It's like, what the hell did you do all this time?
Yeah, that's true. I think Israel should just take control of that land, because I don't really even trust the Muslims to govern properly anyway. I mean, Saudi Arabia is doing a great job, but Mohammed bin Salman is very smart. He doesn't mix Islam with politics. And United Arab Emirates, Qatar, all these countries, they're doing big things. So it's not like a Islam thing. Actually, as a matter of fact, some of the best new countries, such as UAE, Dubai, the most advanced, are actually Islamic. But these countries are not actually Islamic because they tend to have an Islamic majority, but they don't mix politics with religion, which is very smart. Mm-hmm. And that's what needs to happen all over the world, especially in all Islamic countries. You shouldn't mix religion with politics.
I completely agree. Yes, I completely agree, because then you take freedoms away, and when you take freedoms away, there are going to be people, in Iran, there are people who support the Ayatollah for sure. I even see on Instagram, I started watching some of these videos, and now it keeps showing up on my feed. I'm seeing these Shia. I'll send you some of them. You'll have maybe in Shia Islam, an Ayatollah is essentially a sheikh or an imam, right? That's what you call them.
Yeah.
So you'll have a guy in the center of this huge crowd, and they're all going like this, right? They're hitting their heads, right?
Yeah.
The music's pretty catchy sometimes. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. It's like a little festival. What I would do if I was like ever in a position of power, I would, because I know what that is. It's called Ashura Taswa. And for Shiites, 40 days in a year is Imam Hussein's death. Imam Hussein was Muhammad's grandson.
Yes,
and he basically, no, but the president is Ali, but then it's the son of Ali. Right. So,
Zainab, who's Zainab? Because they always mention that.
Yazid, you mean? Zainab is a girl's name. I don't know. Yazid, because basically what happened in Islam is that after Muhammad's death, Islam split into two, Sunni and Shia. Yeah. So Sunnis, they believe that Muhammad was the only prophet, and after him, they just had a leader called Yazid. But then some people believe that actually Islam is a continuous thing, and actually after Muhammad is going to be Ali, and he's the Imam Ali, and after Ali is going to be Hussein, Imam Hussein. So there was this bloody altercation and this bloody war between Sunnis and Shiites. So what happened is that 1,400 years ago, in the desert of Karbala, which is actually in Iraq.
I know more of this actually. I don't. Yeah, go on. I'm because I'm learning this.
So Hussein, which was the head of the Shiites, goes to war with Yazid, which is the head of the Sunnis, and for some reason, Hussein's army abandoned him. So he only goes to war with 72 people, literally 72 people versus thousands and thousands of people. So he basically dies, like 300 type, like, the 300. So basically that kind of thing happened, but between Yazid and Hussein. So now, 1,400 years later, Shiites, which predominantly live in Iran and they're Persians, we have to have 40 days in a year where we have a mourning for Hussein, and when they hit themselves, they're just mourning like Hussein. They just hit their head.
And so I see they're crying, and I see they cry.
Yeah, also. They're crying for Hussein because, oh, what a brave man. He went to war with 72 guys and he died. What a brave man. Right. And it's funny to me because they haven't even understood the metaphorics of that story. The metaphor of that story is that Hussein stood up for what he believed in, went to war and died. They still haven't understood that. They just think they have to cry and, mourn. So that whole thing. And if I was in a position of power, like, they have the Year of the Dead in Mexico, they have this festival.
Yes. Yeah.
I would turn it into a festival instead of like people crying. I would make like a fun kind of, what they call it, carnival. I would make it for a day and I would say like, yeah, you can celebrate it, but let's make it fun.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, we do that. It's so funny because we have something called Lag BaOmer. And we light these fires, and it's to commemorate a rabbi. Yes, I guess Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So We
Mm.
commemorate that, where he was unwilling to lose his Jewish identity. It's
Hmm.
I'll send you some info on it if you want, but we
Sure.
celebrate that. Yeah, we don't, people will go to his burial site and maybe cry, but for the most part, it's a very celebratory time.
Yeah. I know. I think Islam, they just need to get away from this whole negative energy crying all the time. Like, we have Easter in Europe or Christian countries. And what's Easter? Easter is basically when they nailed Jesus Christ to the coffin. So if it was the Muslims, they'll be crying their eyes out, but instead we have a celebration. So I feel like every negative thing can be turned into a positive. And I think that will be the way forward for Islam, actually.
That's a good point. See, in our
Mm.
holidays, what are all Jewish holidays, Younes? Do you know what they are, essentially? They all come
No,
down to
tell me.
every
Tell me.
single Jewish holiday at its premise is people tried to kill us, they were unsuccessful, and now we eat and drink to celebrate it.
Yeah.
Is literally what it is. And we
Yeah.
have we have a Jewish version of Halloween that
Yeah.
came before Halloween existed, and we also dress up in costumes. It's called Purim, and
Hmm.
that story is from the Persian Empire, the Jews of the Persian Empire.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
we get really drunk, like in Israel. It's literally the whole country is drunk. It's amazing.
Nice.
It's a blast.
Cool.
Everybody's loving each other. Everybody's hugging each other because it's a celebration. We're not mourning it. We're celebrating. They tried to kill us and we survived.
Hmm.
Like Passover, Hanukkah, every holiday you look at it for
Hmm.
Jews is
Yeah.
literally another story of people trying to kill us and we survived. That's all it
Nice.
is. Yeah,
Cool. Should we wrap up? Do
I
you want
think
to do one
so.
more question? Yeah.
I think that's good.
Cool.
If you have any other points you wanted to make, feel free. Otherwise, I
Mm.
think
No,
we're
no. I think I'm done for today.
awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and yeah, hopefully we'll
I,
do this again soon.
I would be more than happy to, man. I hope you enjoyed this. I definitely did. I got a lot of insight from you. I learned new things. I appreciate you educating me on different forms of Islam and
Yeah,
different historical moments. So thank you, man. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to follow Younes on Younes Rocks. You can follow him. I know you sent me your all of your handles. So I
yeah.
just
It will be in the description. All the handles will be in the description, right? So
So I was about to say that, yes. So
yeah,
Instagram at Younes Rocks, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter on X.
yeah,
TikTok and Twitter have one S, so it's Younes Rocks with one S, and then Instagram and YouTube have two S's. Again,
yeah.
it's going to be in the description so you can see it, guys. As always, real estate, you know who to come to for South Florida. It's always a pleasure to help you. Make sure to follow me at Rafi the Realtor on Instagram. Sign up to my newsletter for my weekly emails Monday mornings. Subscribe, like, and share. Make sure to go follow Younes's content, and I will see you on the next episode.